Thea. She was probably identical with Ashtar or Astarte, and Aphrodite. The story of her descent into the underworld in search presumably for the sacred elixir which alone could restore Tammuz to life is the key to the ritual of her mysteries. Tammuz, whose annual festival took place just before the summer solstice, died in midsummer in the ancient month which bore his name, and was mourned with elaborate ceremonies. The manner of his death is unknown, but some of the accusations made against Ishtar by Ishtar-Nimrod would indicate that she, indirectly at least, had contributed to his demise. The resurrection of Tammuz was the occasion of great rejoicing, at which time he was hailed as a redeemer of his people. With outspread wings, Ishtar, the daughter of Sin the moon, sweeps downward to the gates of death. The house of darkness, the dwelling of the god Urkala, is described as the place of no return. It is without light. The nourishment of those who dwell therein is dust and their food is mud. Over the bolts on the door of the house of Urkala is scattered dust, and the keepers of the house are covered with feathers like birds. Ishtar demands that the keepers open the gates, declaring that if they do not she will shatter the doorposts and strike the hinges and raise up dead devourers of the living. The guardians of the gates beg her to be patient while they go to the Queen of Hades from whom they secure permission to admit Ishtar, but only in the same manner as all others came to this dreary house. Ishtar thereupon descends through the 7 gates which lead downward into the depths of the underworld. At the first gate the great crown is removed from her head, at the second gate the earrings from her ears, at the third gate the necklace from her neck, at the fourth gate the ornaments from her breast, at the fifth gate the girdle from her waist, at the sixth gate the bracelets from her hands and feet, and at the 7th gate the covering cloak of her body. Ishtar remonstrates as each successive article of apparel is taken from her. Bur the guardian tells her that this is the experience of all who enter the somber domain of death. Enraged upon beholding Ishtar, the mistress of Hades inflicts upon her all manner of disease and imprisons her in the underworld. As Ishtar represents the spirit of fertility, her loss prevents the ripening of the crops and the maturing of all life upon the earth. In this respect the story parallels the legend of Persephone. The gods, realizing that the loss of Ishtar is disorganizing all nature, send a messenger to the underworld and demand her release. The mistress of Hades is forced to comply, and the water of life is poured over Ishtar. Thus cured of the infirmities inflicted on her, she retraces her way upward through the 7 gates, at each of which she is reinvested with the article of apparel which the guardians had removed. See the Chaldean account of Genesis. No record exists that Ishtar secured the water of life which would have wrought the resurrection of Tammuz. The myth of Ishtar symbolizes the descent of the human spirit through the 7 worlds, or spheres of the sacred planets, until finally, deprived of its spiritual adornments, it incarnates in the physical body, Hades, where the mistress of that body heaps every form of sorrow and misery upon the imprisoned consciousness. The waters of life, the secret doctrine, cure the diseases of ignorance. And the spirit, ascending again to its divine source, regains its God-given adornments as it passes upward through the rings of the planets. Another mystery ritual among the Babylonians and Assyrians was that of Merodach and the dragon. Merodach, the creator of the inferior universe, slays a horrible monster and out of her body forms the universe. Here is the probable source of the so-called Christian allegory of St. George and the dragon. The mysteries of Adonis, or Adoni, were celebrated annually in many parts of Egypt, Phoenicia, and Byblos. The name Adonis, or Adoni, means Lord and was a designation applied to the sun and later borrowed by the Jews as the exoteric name of the god. Smyrna, mother of Adonis, was turned into a tree by the gods and after a time the bark burst open and the infant Savior issued forth. According to one account, he was liberated by a wild boar which split the wood of the maternal tree with its tusks. Adonis was born at midnight of the 24th of December, and through his unhappy death a mystery rite was established that wrought the salvation of his people. In the Jewish month of Tammuz, another name for this deity, he was gored to death by a wild boar sent by the god Mars. The Adoniosmos was the ceremony of lamenting the premature death of the murdered god. In Ezekiel v. 14, it is written that women were weeping for Tammuz Adonis at the north gate of the Lord's house in Jerusalem. Sir James George Fraser cites Jerome thus: he tells us that Bethlehem, the traditionary birthplace of the Lord, was shaded by a grove of that still older Syrian lord, Adonis, and that where the infant Jesus had wept, the lover of Venus was bewailed. See the golden bough. The effigy of a wild boar is said to have been set over one of the gates of Jerusalem in honor of Adonis, and his rites celebrated in the grotto of the Nativity at Bethlehem. Adonis as the god or god-man is one of the keys to Sir Francis Bacon's use of the wild boar in his cryptic symbolism. Adonis was originally an androgynous deity who represented the solar power which in the winter was destroyed by the evil principle of cold, the boar. After 3 months in the tomb, Adonis rose triumphant on the 25th day of March, amidst the acclamation of his priests and followers, "He is risen." Adonis was born out of a myrrh tree. Myrrh, the symbol of death because of its connection with the process of embalming, was one of the gifts brought by the 3 Magi to the manger of Jesus. In the mysteries of Adonis the neophyte passed through the symbolic death of the god and, raised by the priests, entered into the blessed state of redemption made possible by the sufferings of Adonis. Nearly all authors believe Adonis to have been originally a vegetation god directly connected with the growth and maturing of flowers and fruits. In support of this viewpoint they describe the gardens of Adonis, which were small baskets of earth in which seeds were planted and nurtured for a period of 8 days. When those plants prematurely died for lack of sufficient earth, they were considered emblematic of the murdered Adonis and were usually cast into the sea with images of the god. Insert. From Kirker's Oedipus Iptychus. The great Pan was celebrated as the author and director of the sacred dances which he is supposed to have instituted to symbolize the circumambulations of the heavenly bodies. Pan was a composite creature, the upper part, with the exception of his horns, being human, and the lower part in the form of a goat. Pan is the prototype of natural energy and, while undoubtedly a phallic deity, should nor be confused with Priapus. The pipes of Pan signify the natural harmony of the spheres, and the god himself is a symbol of Saturn because this planet is enthroned in Capricorn, whose emblem is a goat. The Egyptians were initiated into the mysteries of Pan, who was regarded as a phase of Jupiter, the demiurgus. Pan represented the impregnating power of the sun and was the chief of a horde rustic deities, and satyrs. He also signified the controlling spirit of the lower worlds. The fabricated a story to the effect that at the time of the birth of Christ the oracles were silenced after giving utterance to one last cry, "Great Pan is dead." Continued. In Phrygia there existed a remarkable school of religious philosophy which centered around the life and untimely fate of another savior god known as Hades, or Eris, by many considered synonymous with Adonis. This deity was born at midnight on the 24th day of December. Of his death there are 2 accounts. In one he was gored to death like Adonis. In the other he emasculated himself under a pine tree and there died. His body was taken to a cave by the great mother Cybele, where it remained through the ages without decaying. To the rites of Hades the modern world is indebted for the symbolism of the Christmas tree. Hades imparted his immortality to the tree beneath which he died, and Cybele took the tree with her when she removed the body. Hades remained 3 days in the tomb, rose upon a date corresponding with Easter morn, and by this resurrection overcame death for all who were initiated into his mysteries. In the mysteries of the Phrygians, says Julius Firmicus, which are called those of the mother of the gods, every year a pine tree is cut down and in the inside of the tree the image of a youth is tied in. In the mysteries of Isis the trunk of a pine tree is cut, the middle of the trunk is nicely hollowed out. The idol of Osiris made from those hollowed pieces is buried in the mysteries of Proserpine. A tree cut is put together into the effigy and form of the Virgin, and when it has been carried within the city it is mourned 40 nights, but the 40th night it is burned. See Sod, the mysteries of Adoni. The mysteries of Hades included a sacramental meal during which the neophyte ate out of a drum and drank from a cymbal. After being baptized by the blood of a bull, the new initiate was fed entirely on milk to symbolize that he was still a philosophical infant, having but recently been born out of the sphere of materiality. See Fraser's The Golden Bough. Is there a possible connection between this lacteal diet prescribed by the Attic rite and St. Paul's allusion to the food for spiritual babes? Salus gives a key to the esoteric interpretation of the Attic rituals. Cybele, the Great Mother, signifies the vivifying powers of the universe, and Ada is that aspect of the spirit